There's this advice that says, if you're offered a seat on a rocket ship, don't ask which seat, just get on. But what if you don't know which opportunity is gonna be a rocket ship for your career and which is gonna be a dud? You kinda don't. When Lew Frankfort became CEO of Coach, it was a $5 million family business growing slowly. He did not know that this company was gonna grow to be a rocket ship. All he knew was that the government job he was in was not cutting it anymore, and it was time to move. If you're listening to this, you know in your gut when it's time to move on from something. Are you acting on that gut? Because the next thing you do could be the place where you thrive. Lew's gut decisions about his career allowed him to be in a role where he could excel. And turns out, he was the one who was destined to make Coach a rocket ship. One way he did this was by pioneering the concept of accessible luxury. Check out this conversation with the former CEO of Coach. Lew, welcome to Bossy.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that most successful people have had moments where they have to scale back in order to move forward. Like they have to do something that almost feels like a downsize for a while in order to do something bigger. So if I think about like Oprah Winfrey, who got like demoted from TV news and then she pivots to daytime and like that's where she does really well. Or Sheryl Sandberg, who had this like government career and it almost was like a step down to work at this small company called Google. But that was like she had a lot of success there. And when I look at your story, I see this as like a trend and a commonality in your story too. So when you came to work at Coach, what were you doing before that? And did it feel like a weird sidestep or a downsize to actually work at Coach? This episode is sponsored by AT&T Business. Working with them has really made me think about all of the ways that technology impacts my company as a small business owner. My personal team is fully remote. We're spread across 6 different locations, and we really rely a lot on remote working tools to stay connected. We use all kinds of things like payroll services and compliance tools, video conferencing, and project management software. These remote working tools, they're literally what keeps us all on the same page. Visit att.com/y-att-business to see how they can help you better leverage technology to boss up your business.
That's a great question. I was in government for about 10 years. I worked in New York City government in human services, and my most senior role occurred during the city's fiscal crisis in the mid-'70s when I was appointed daycare and Head Start commissioner during a turbulent time. And it was my job to ensure that eligible children got care and that funds were wisely spent. So
totally different than ultimately being the CEO of Coach.
And very different from having initially a desk outside the founder's office when I went to work at Coach.
Yeah. Okay. So how did you feel when you were considering this role and being a leader at Coach? Did it feel like it was a downsize? Did it feel like you were sidestepping? Did it feel that way or it didn't feel that way?
It felt like I was entering a different reality.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really think I was stepping down. I was just going into the unknown.
Yeah. And when you came from the government role to leadership at Coach, was this like the same salary role? Like I'm thinking about people who are listening to this, who are thinking about pivoting careers and pivoting kind of industries and maybe taking a jump to do something that they haven't done before, but it feels like they've been doing this thing, they're established at this thing, it's working for them, and they now have to move to do something that maybe is less known. And I'm curious, like, what was coming up for you at this time, right? Like, did you take the same salary? Was it an increase or a decrease? How was that piece?
It was exactly the same salary, $800 a week. I didn't have the same level of benefits, so there was fewer benefits, but I knew that it was an unusual opportunity and that I was lucky to have it.
Yeah. Sheryl Sandberg has this quote where she says, if you're offered a seat on a rocket ship, don't ask which one, just get on. And I think about that quote really often. I have a friend who I would say like regularly asks which seat he's being asked to be on. So what it means in his scenario is like there'll be an opportunity that comes up and it'll be really close to where he wants to take his career. But because it's not perfect, he says no. And then the next opportunity comes and it's not quite perfect, exactly what he was thinking. So he says no. And so I'm wondering, when you think about like your journey when you were starting as a leader at Coach, was this the opportunity that you were looking for that was exactly what you wanted? Or did you kind of just get offered a seat on a rocket ship and you just took a seat, any seat?
Well, first, it wasn't a rocket ship. It was very controlled growth.
Yeah.
I knew that I was doing something really different. After 10 years in government, the question that I pondered was, where do I go next? I could have easily have gone to a major consulting company, but I wanted to run something and learn how to be an entrepreneur. So when this opportunity came, and it was fate. I was sharing a taxi with a fellow who was in federal government, but also teaching part-time as an adjunct professor at Columbia. And I guest lectured in one of his evening classes about the work I did in Agency for Child Development, the daycare agency. And we shared a yellow taxi going downtown from Columbia University, he to his home, me to mine. And he said to me, "What do you do for an encore?" And I said, "That's a great question. I'm not sure, but I do need to make a transition." I went on to tell him that Ed Koch had just passed me up for a job that I thought I was qualified for, and that when I asked the mayor, late mayor, why, he said, "You're too principled, Lew. You know that." And I thought it was time for me to get some greater control over my life.
At some point when you were the CEO at Coach, you got promoted to work at the parent company, like a company that owned Coach. And I read that you did not like that role. It wasn't really a good fit. So you moved back to being the CEO of Coach. Like, did that feel like a slide back in a way, a lateral move? Like, it seems like you're really willing to take up the unexpected job and to do the unexpected thing next. Can you tell that story a little bit about what happened when you got promoted and then moved back?
I joined Coach, as I said, in 1979. The sales were about $6 million. It was in 1985 when the founder decided to sell the business and retire the day he sold the business. And when he told me he was going to sell the business, he said, even though I wasn't qualified to be CEO, he would recommend me because he did not want to work for anyone else, and he would leave the same day. And true to his promise, he did leave. And true to what his expectation was, I became CEO in 1985 when the sales were $25 million.
Okay.
And the reason Sara Lee, which was a very large conglomerate, $20 billion in sales 40 years ago.
That's who he sold it to. So they become the
Correct.
owning company.
Exactly. And I participated along with a boutique banker in identifying and recruiting companies. And I thought Sara Lee would be a great match. And it was a great match for a while.
Okay,
And,
until it wasn't.
Until it wasn't. And it was for the first few years, I learned a lot. Sara Lee really believes in accountability. What gets measured gets done. There's rituals and routines. And I wanted a report card. I did better in a situation where there would be something to strive for, key metrics.
Yeah.
And Coach, the reason they wanted Coach, by the way, was because we were at the time what I called a multi-channel business. Today they're called omni-channels. So when I joined Coach, as I said, we sold to anyone who paid their bills. But I started a direct business, first a catalog business, and second opened some Coach stores in order to gain control over our destiny and present the Coach brand in the most holistic, complete way.
So you leave Coach, you go work for Sara Lee, which is the company that owned Coach at the time. but you did
Yes.
not love that role. What were the things that you did not love about that role?
Well, I loved being CEO of Coach,
Yeah.
and as I said, for the first while, Coach flourished under Sara Lee. Because they had over 100 companies, they were very decentralized, and if you made your annual plan, they largely left you alone. However, there were overall corporate guidelines that were inconsistent with the way I wanted to do things.
Yeah.
So they wanted me, as an example, to use an advertising agency that they got economies from, but I didn't think they were the right agency for us.
Yeah.
I pushed back and we did not use them. They also wanted me to offer products at J.C. Penney in order to help another brand, Hanes, get larger distribution, and I declined. It was not easy, but I did. We also kept them at some distance around some of our personnel policies, which were not in keeping with their strict codes.
Got it. So pretty much people are telling you what to do, and you're like, no, actually, I'm not going to do it that way. And there was some friction there.
Yes, there was a lot of friction between me and some of the people that I reported into. However, we performed really well. And I did have the unconditional support of the then CEO and chairman, John Bryan, who really admired Coach and the efforts we were making to reach consumers in image enhancing ways wherever they chose to shop.
It's interesting how some companies that you work at, like their culture is a great match and fit for you. And some companies that you work at, like the culture is just terrible for you. I'm wondering if there were periods where like you knew that you were in kind of the wrong project or the wrong role or making the wrong business decision and you could like feel it in your body.
Absolutely. So we were with Sara Lee for 15 years. About 7 years into my journey with Sara Lee, Coach was now a $250, $300 million business. And I had an opportunity to become a group officer, which meant in addition to Coach, I would be responsible for other portfolio companies.
I love the way that you're so humble about things. You like the way that you drop numbers about the way that you've grown these companies and all the companies that you manage. Like I just want to like brush a little dirt off of your shoulder. Like it's just like it's impressive. Are you impressed with yourself?
No.
That's always how it is, right?
I mean, I still fear failure. And it's remarkable at this stage of my life where I've exceeded anything that I ever dreamt I might. So what I was about to say, when I became a group officer, I had made a decision. Well, I'm going to just step back. I was running Coach. And even though there were intermediate bosses, I had a lot of freedom because Coach was a star within the 100 brand portfolio, a small star, but a gem. So I did have a lot of freedom because we performed well. And then I was told one day that I was going to get a new boss, someone who I wouldn't have hired to work for me, but
let alone be your boss.
And I decided that if I'm going to be part of Sara Lee, I really needed to rise in the hierarchy. I was a group officer for about 3 years, and when they do the succession plans, I was one of a few candidates that were positioned 5 years out to perhaps become the CEO of Sara Lee. However, not too long into the position, I started to get agita. And I did because I really didn't have control over the people that I was reporting into because they were lifers at Sara Lee for the most part. They were there for 10 years, 20 years. They had grown up in Sara Lee. Many were promoted into Sara Lee, and they had their businesses, they had their lane, and if they made their plan, they had checked off the box.
Got it.
So when I tried to influence the companies to look at other opportunities, I did not have the authority to insist.
Yeah. And what was
And I
the
wasn't,
impact on that on you? Like, I'm curious about kind of how you were settling with that or sitting with that. Like, were you feeling
um,
fine physically? Was it like, oh, this is like, I feel it in my body that it's
no,
frustrating me?
my body was telling me and my mind was telling me I was not in the right place. I found myself feeling low, feeling ineffective, feeling that all I wanted to do was be with my love coach and my business love. Um,
Yeah.
and and I would spend 20 or 30% of my time at coach, which I would love.
Yeah.
And also, from Sara Lee's perspective, I wasn't developing the type of collaborative relationships that they expected. It led to sleepless nights. It led to feeling a loss of some of my mojo, and I felt like I was failing,
Not the
and it wasn't a good
mojo.
feeling.
Yeah. Losing your mojo is an expensive thing. Like, we say it like it's not that big of a deal, but like the impact, if you were like a high performer, like you know what it feels like to be in your mojo and be in your groove. And when you are
Yeah,
off on that, whether it's because like the job environment or the company environment is not right, or you feel like you're not making the right decisions, like being off of your mojo, like you can really feel the difference. And I've heard you say that like this role and not moving away. I've heard you say that moving away from coach and not running it for a while made you sick, right? And I think that's what I'm hearing you
yeah.
say.
Well, I would say the combination of being unwanted, unappreciated, and feeling that I wasn't having the impact, substantive impact, to strengthen the brands and the businesses that I was responsible led me to feel that I was largely wasting my time and being unsuccessful.
Right. You're like, why am I here? Right. Okay.
You know, your body doesn't lie to you. So my stress manifested. My shoulders got tight. My back hurt constantly. I, I would have dreams waking up drenched in sweat on my versions of my failure dreams. And it took everything I could to get myself up to get on a plane and travel to whatever
Yeah.
cities I was responsible to go to. And over the, and during this time, in my discussions with senior executives at Sara Lee, I said to them that I really wanted to return to coach, and they agreed that that was the best thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking about times even in running my own business where I also can like feel in my body that things are not in alignment and that things are not right. I have this like gluten sensitivity, which normally if my stress levels, like I believe that there's often like a correlation between like our bodies and stress, right? So if my stress levels in my own company are kind of like managed and low, gluten's fine. I can eat a slice of pizza and I'm fine. But when I'm stressed, I feel like my body is like, girl, you can have the gluten or the stress. You got to pick one, but I cannot do both. And so I start to like get these weird symptoms. And it made me, when you were telling this story, it made me think about how like we talk about athletes sometimes and like how it's like this physical sport and like they have to think about their bodies and keeping their bodies in alignment with the sport that they're playing. But I think that there's a lot of like business leadership and being a business person and being a high performer at work that also like if you're not in alignment with it, the right company or the right culture or making the right business decisions, like you can feel it in your body. And that also is a physical thing too. I never thought about it that
Absolutely.
way. You actually just unlocked something for me.
Yeah. So I was keenly aware that I needed to de-stress
Yeah.
during these periods, and also I always exercise, but it became even a requirement
Right.
to begin my day with a run.
Yeah.
And or with my long days and short nights of sleep, I began to cultivate napping as a way to refuel or replenish. And so between meditation, exercise, power napping, massaging, acupuncture,
Listen, you're
and
on it.
trying to.
So, Lou, I was looking on TikTok and I was seeing some videos about people talking about this concept of luxury and accessible luxury. I want to show you a video I was looking at yesterday on TikTok. It's like
Sure.
gone viral and hear your thoughts about it. I think we can pull
Great.
this video up and play it.
luxury brands, they have two types of clothing. They have the clothing that they make for the rich people, and they have the clothing made for the poor people. It's the poor people that make the brand famous because they're walking around the mall with the logo of the brand. But it's the rich people who actually use that brand for the quality of the brand and not for showing that I'm wearing this brand. People who show off extra, who are always showing cars, and probably they're renting the cars, I don't know. But these people have insecurity because they don't have money. They want to show that they do have money.
What are your thoughts on that? Because you've done a lot in this space of positioning brands as luxury, as accessible luxury. And I'm curious if you have thoughts on that video.
I think it's an oversimplification of what brings people to luxury. And this pinnacle luxury, which targets perhaps the top 1% of consumers.
Yeah.
A brand like Hermes. And then there's other luxury brands that might target the top 3 to 5%, like LV or Brunello Cucinelli. And then there's, of course, accessible luxury brands, which target, like Coach, the top 20% of U.S. households.
Got it. Okay. So true or false, do you think that most American small businesses would be better off if they position themselves as accessible luxury?
It depends on the proposition, not one size fits all. So it depends on the idea, who the target audience is, what the competition is, barriers to entry, what you're looking to achieve, what success would look like down the road.
Yeah. And during your time at Coach, you really pioneered this concept of accessible luxury. Can you help us understand the difference between like accessible luxury and regular luxury?
Sure. Okay. So it's an interesting paradigm when you look at accessories as well as sportswear.
Okay.
So interestingly, in the bag world, back in the 90s, there was, in the United States, there was mass, and mass represented perhaps 85% of the units, 90% of the units purchased. And they were copies of European brands. They were imitations. They were made with synthetic materials. And then there was a small area in the middle, and then which we called premium. And then there was the European luxury brands at the top. Before we went public as a company in the year 2000, it became clear when we started to talk with investors, they didn't really understand the category. What is a premium brand? So my team and I, we sat in the conference room, and like many teams prior to putting together a roadshow, we put a lot of words on the board and to describe the lane that we were traveling in.
Okay.
And somehow the words accessible luxury stuck. And it was a way to help investors and ultimately consumers understand. And what we did was, we had a single lane. We were a small company, relatively speaking. We were $500 million at that time. And we turned it into a superhighway when we grew to $5 billion in the following 10 years after going public. So it was quite the experience. I just have a little story to tell you.
Yeah.
On the roadshow, you travel to different cities, you have a banker, you come with your top team, and you prepare, you prepare, and then you have a Q&A. So in the audiences, we might have 10 or 200 people. And in one of the larger groups, one day early in the roadshow, to warm up the audience, which was about 80% men, I asked the women first.
Okay.
How many of you know the brand of the bag you're carrying? Every woman raised their hand.
Right.
And then the 80%, the men, I said, I want, without looking into your pocket, I'd like you to tell me raise your hand if you know the brand of wallet that you're carrying. And almost no one raised their hand. And
right.
in that moment, light bulbs went off. And the male investors understood that women are really attached to their bags.
Yeah.
It's one of the most intimate possessions that people have.
So I want to do two quick things with you. I want people who are listening to this, who are interested in this concept of accessible luxury for their own business. So let's say I will use myself for as an example. I have an app
Sure.
development company. This concept of accessible luxury, something that people really like to have that has quality. Like, what are the qualities? Give me like 3 qualities of something. If I want to make sure that my brand has an accessible luxury positioning, what are the 3 things that I need to do or have as part of my brand?
First, you need a distinctive product that conveys the values of the company that's behind it, because
Okay.
you need storytelling in order to let consumers understand what you're doing.
Storytelling is the first one.
Well, I would start with a distinctive proposition, whether it's a service
Great.
or a product. It needs to be distinctive.
Okay.
It needs to be different than what's in the marketplace, and it needs to have features or benefits that people can understand do not exist. And second, understanding where you fit within the addressable market. So trying to understand who is the target consumer and how do you address the target consumer. And by definition, brands that are accessible luxury brands target somewhere between the top 20 to 40% of US households. So price is not the lead consideration.
Right.
So you need to really target households that have, in today's dollars, at least $100,000 of household income.
Got it.
Now, not everyone has it, because you have aspirational consumers who save because of the prestige.
So what's an
et cetera, et
example of
cetera.
a brand that you think does accessible luxury well? I know we may have talked about some of this, but like, what's an example of one that you like?
I've always liked Patagonia.
Yeah.
It's a brand that has withstood the test of times. The storytelling reinforces the product. Service levels are high. The environment conveys authenticity.
Yeah.
Outdoors, everything about
If we have to give
Patagonia.
Patagonia like a report card on some of these areas, what are we giving them? Like, if we on the like not a lot of discounts. Actually, I'm not familiar with this. Do we give them like an A, a B, a C on the discounting?
I would
What do we give
say,
them?
I mean, again, I haven't studied their
Yeah.
numbers. My belief is that discounting is a strategy with
Yeah.
Patagonia, and most companies have discounting strategies. What happens often is when the business doesn't go well, everything goes out the window, and you have to discount much earlier than you do otherwise.
Do you know if Patagonia does a
Patagonia-
lot of discounting, or they don't lean on that a lot?
I do not believe they lean on it a lot. And part of when you discount, you really have to understand what product are you discounting, to what consumers are you discounting, when are you discounting.
Yeah.
Consistency is really important. If people expect you to mark down products on December 24th, it's all good. But if you start marking it down November 15th or October 1st, it changes the equation.
I think it may
And-
also be problematic too if they're expecting you to discount at a certain date and now they're just going to wait and not buy prior to that date because they know that you're going to do a discount, because you always do discounts. And that's, I think, one of the things that like decreases your brand value and perception is overly discounting.
That's true if you discount most of your products, but better brands like Patagonia and Coach do not, and I can add Veronica Beard, do not discount all of their products. They at any one time, they discontinue fashion products, limited edition products, colors that are not going to be continued.
Yeah.
So the products that are going to be available next season are not offered on discount by any well-run, well-managed brand
Right.
that is a multi-channel business.
Lew, thank you so much for sharing your experience. It's been really great to hear your journey on a couple different areas and your expertise about kind of how pricing should be and accessible luxury, but also how to like manage yourself and your health when you feel like a role or a position is right or not right for you. I think this will be really insightful for people to hear. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Nice to see you and be with you.